Hey guys, welcome to Teal House Farm. Tonight the kids are out splashing and jumping and I was working in the garden. Okay, we'll see your trick. And I thought I would talk about the 5 pros and cons we felt we discovered this year. This is our first year trying no-till gardening. Go! Woo! And we've learned a lot. Okay. We've learned so much. We definitely found when we were researching it, we feel like a lot of channels really upplay the benefits and aren't real honest about the downsides. There are downsides to any type of gardening you do, but there are some definite benefits to no-till. So I thought today we could chat about the 5 pros and cons we've discovered. Again, this is only our first year, so I'm sure this list will grow as the years go on, and we do intend to continue with this no-till gardening in the future. So overall, we're very happy. But let's talk about what we've learned on both sides. Before we jump right in, I do want to tell you real quick about how we built the garden in case you're brand new here. No-till gardening is the basic idea that you aren't going to get a tiller out and till up the ground to create a garden space. And it's the idea that you build on top of what's already there. So you're going to smother out the grass and weeds and build your garden bed on top of it. There are a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, you can be pretty creative, and different channels and different creators have different ways. So I'm just going to tell you how we did it. We did not have money to spend, period. So we wanted to create it for absolute free, which is what we did. So our base layer is cardboard. I collected cardboard from friends and family who saved it from me. I started putting it down, I think it was like December, just in patches until I had the whole area we wanted covered with cardboard. Once that was done, we cleaned out our deep bedded stall. So deep bedding is the idea that over many years you just keep packing in straw and shavings and things. Our goats were living there, and it was very deep. It was probably a solid, 16 to 18 inches deep, and it was an incredible amount of manual labor. But we emptied out the deep bedded stall and started layering that on top of the cardboard that we had put down. And then on top of that, I mixed in some fill dirt on the very top layer. I was worried about just straight compost being way too, have too much nitrogen and things in it. And so that's just kind of how I finagled it together. It seems to have worked really well. And if you want to watch the entire process of me building that garden by hand, there's a whole playlist on YouTube. It took me almost 2 months. This was a big project. But anyway, now that you kind of know how we build it, so we have a garden that's just your regular, it was a regular lawn, then cardboard on top, then old composted bedded material, and then some fill dirt on top of that. Okay, we're going to start with the pros, because let's start with the happy thoughts. And I will say, I think the happy thoughts outweigh the negative thoughts overall. So overall, as I said, I think we like this method of gardening and we'll continue doing it, but I think we need to be honest so that you can decide if it's a good choice for you and where you're at. So the biggest pros are the ones you've probably already heard. Number one, there's less weeding. I have had to weed my garden maybe 4 times this whole season. The weeds just don't break through the cardboard barrier with the compost and such on top. It's nice and thick. We made sure to make it at least 4 inches thick, and so the weeds have really been just smothered out. They do kind of creep in around the edges, and we just kind of keep an eye on those, and we kept our plants inside the garden far enough that we actually just weed eat around the edges to keep the plants, the grass, and the weeds from kind of growing inward. And that really seems to do the trick. Every once in a while, you'll get a weed that found, a crack in your foundation, a space between 2 pieces of cardboard or something like that. But in general, there's been almost no weeding. So no plants getting choked out by weeds. I'm not out there every day weeding. When we've done row gardens the last 7 years, and a row garden, I had to be out there every day, at least 30 to 45 minutes a day, weeding, no matter how hot it was or whatever. Like, you had to do it because they grew so fast. Do not have that problem here, and I love that about the no-till bed. The second is it's great for the worms and the beneficial animals, insects that we want in the ground. So when you till, you're kind of dicing up, making a worm stew as that tiller runs through your garden. So just by layering the cardboard and then the composting material and some fill dirt on top, we're not killing any worms. We're providing a haven for them. So you're going to keep those really beneficial insects and bugs that you want in your garden, and you're not sacrificing them in order to till up your garden. It's also very easy in general, I found, to find pests and their eggs on your plants. There aren't weeds everywhere for pests to hide, and so you can kind of just walk your sections or your rows, however you end up planting in your no-till bed, and just turn your leaves over, and it's really easy to see signs of insect activity and be able to take care of it. I feel like it's much easier to find pests than it was in the row garden, the traditional tilled row garden, mostly because the weeds are always under control, so the plants are very exposed and it's very easy to see them and what's going on with them. I also feel that the plants just look really healthy. The soil, because of all the work that we did building this garden, is very nutrient dense. We have this cantaloupe plant that has grown. I swear it's a quarter of the size of the garden, and it's green and it's healthy and it has so many cantaloupes on it. It's true for our squashes. Our tomato plants are humongous. And so the plants are very happy there. And we've struggled with our tilled garden year after year, trying to amend the soil the right way, because we have very clayey soil where we are, and it was always just a struggle. Drainage was a struggle, but because this is a no-till bed, we built it so it's a little bit domed up so the water runs out of the garden. We don't have any swampy areas, and there's nice balanced nutrition throughout the soil, and it's kind of the same all the way around the garden. You don't have bad spots in the garden, and so all of the plants are really thriving, which is wonderful. And then the last one, number 5, it was very easy to plant. The ground was really soft because we built the garden literally from the foundation up. And so it wasn't this tilling and then you have to get out the small tiller and then you got to get out the garden hoe and make sure it's really well broken up. There's none of that. When it was time to plant, it was literally just like a hoe to shovel it up into the little mounds and then poke it in the ground. Super soft. It was great. And it was so easy to plant. And lastly, the cons. So these are things I feel like I don't think were highlighted in when I was trying to research. People talked about all the positive, but they didn't talk about some of the negative, and I think they're really important to talk about so you know what you're getting yourself into. Again, this is only 1 year of experience, so maybe this gets much better over time, and I'm going to forget about these cons in the long run, but let's talk about the negatives right now. The first is that we notice it dries out a lot faster. You have to water your garden every day, sometimes twice a day if it's really hot, if it's not going to rain. It dries out so fast because it's really light composted material on top. Now, I think putting straw down after you plant your plants in the ground once they've sprouted will help keep the moisture in, which then means you don't have to water as much and can be much more conservative on your watering. Problem is, straw costs $7 to $8 a bale out here. In the size of our garden, we were looking at spending several $100s on straw, which was not financially possible for us. So the solution was to do a lot of watering, especially at the beginning. The next one is it was an incredibly difficult build. If I had known when I started how long it was going to take and how physically taxing it was going to be, I probably would have wimped out and not done it. I way underestimated the amount of work it would be to build this garden. I'd like to remind people who are watching who maybe don't know, we do not have any large equipment on our farm. I built this garden with my hands, one shovel, and a wheelbarrow, and that was all I had. I have no tractor, I don't have an ATV to pull a trailer. I literally got in the barn with a pickaxe, broke up the bedding, put it in a wheelbarrow with a shovel, dragged the wheelbarrow down to the garden, dumped it, and repeated probably well over 100 times. So if you are in a position where you cannot afford large equipment, don't have large equipment, and are not physically able to do that amount of work, a no-till bed may not be your best choice unless you are financially able to hire somebody to help you. Also, if you don't have access to free composted material or old bedding from stalls, then it's obviously going to get expensive trying to buy those types of things. Number 3, I noticed a lower germination rate for seeds planted into the ground. Now, the survival rate of seedlings that I transplanted into the garden was basically 100%, which is awesome. But seeds direct sown into the ground, the germination rate was terrible, especially for corn and green beans. I thought maybe it was the packages I had. I bought different varieties. Some of them I planted 3 times. The germination rate was horrible. And I think it has to do with what I said before, how fast things were drying out because of how light the material is that we built our garden out of. And so that was really disappointing. So this year we don't have any green beans basically, and we don't have any corn because my germination rate was so low. So something to keep in mind. That's our experience. Again, straw probably would have made a difference, but again, didn't have the money to spend on it. The next, number 4, the ground is really soft for the same reasons we've stated before, just how it's built, which means when you're putting in stakes for things like tomato plants, you have to make sure that you drill them through the cardboard into the soil, the original ground underneath. Otherwise, you get a good rain, and guess what? Your big, tall tomato plants and those T-post stakes or fencing or however you have them situated, it topples over and it pulls. We had a couple of tomatoes actually get pulled straight out of the ground, still attached to their T-posts, because the ground was soft and then got saturated and could not support the T-post anymore. That was something that I hadn't even thought of when I was doing this. And so do make sure, if you do a no-till bed that's layered like this, that your stakes and such, that anything that's supporting a plant is well buried through your cardboard layer to make sure that it can withstand a heavy rain and not topple over. And last thing is this, there's going to be a continual amount of work each year. Considering how much work it was to build it and still not owning any equipment and really don't have any plans to buy any equipment in the next year, I am a little nervous how physically taxing the work is going to be in the continual years. From what I've read, a lot of people like to put a new layer of cardboard down every year and then top it off. And knowing how long it took me to do this year's, I don't want to have to do that every year. So I don't know that I'm going to do that. I might just mix in some fresh, compost or some fill dirt. I have to do some more research. I am a little bit nervous though about how much work it's going to end up being from year to year. It's nice not having to do all the weeding, but if you're going to just trade that in for 6 weeks of hard labor in the winter and spring to get the garden ready for next year, I'm not sure if it's actually worth the trade-off. So that's something I'm interested to see and be able to speak more to as I have more experience with this no-till setup. I hope that's helpful for you guys. It's just our experience. It's not true for everybody. I just wanted to try to give kind of a reality check to something that's kind of really hot and popular right now in the homesteading world, just what our experience was with it. There's so many variations and variables that can affect the outcome. So obviously our truth is not the 100% truth on this. It's just our experience. Thanks so much for watching, guys. And as always, we will see you next time.